let me know when you're ready. Okay. Welcome to the executive committee meeting of Community Board 14. Just a reminder, we are live streaming and this is being recorded, so keep it clean. Don't be like Bradley Jackson. And if you know the pop culture reference, I'm going to give you a prize.
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
If we can get everyone who's not speaking on mute, thank you very much.
Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound.
And so we have a little bit of a change of the agenda tonight. We're going to go ahead and start with what was originally planned, thanking our agency representatives, but we do not yet have a list of new members and those who have been reappointed. So we're going to take that time and add it on to other business, where I was hoping we can talk a little bit about the changes to the topical committees and the regional committee that we've been discussing in the bylaw meetings. So let's see where we can go with that towards the end of the meeting. But the rest of the agenda remains the same. We'll be hearing from District Manager Sean Campbell, and then we'll be hearing a presentation about ranked choice voting. And with that, I'd like to invite District Manager Sean Campbell to go ahead and give her thanks for, this is basically our end year party. I'm sorry, there's no fanfare.
I am too, and I look forward to the time when we can gather and do this in real life and give a longer list of people their just due. Just quickly though, before I begin with thanks to our agency partners, I just want to say that we did expect to have our board, new board members and reappointed members by now. And maybe I just got a little bit too optimistic and enthusiastic. But I just want to assure everybody it should be any day now. And it seems like reappointments, everybody who's supposed to be reappointed who reapplied is on the list. And so then we'll see who the new members are as well, because there were some vacancies this time around. But anybody who's continues to be worried about it, just reach out to me and I'll continue to reach out to Eileen Mullaney-Newman in Borough Hall, who's been in constant contact and I know is doing her best to sort of shepherd the process through to the best of her ability. But stay in touch if it doesn't happen within, a week or so. Certainly by our June meeting, we need all of our reappointments in place so our chair can chair the meeting. So we'll continue to follow up. Thanks for your patience with that, and sorry for jumping the gun. As far as, I think it goes along with this being the year that this year has been, and along that line, I just wanted to, I'm going to write some letters to some commissioners and supervisors for agency partners and give them the accolades that they deserve. But I just also wanted to say it out loud publicly, since we can't gather at a reception. I just wanted it to be, for people to know that everybody had to do extra work, and it was extra hard for all agencies. But some of our liaisons just always made sure that they were proactive, and that if we asked them to do something, they not only did it, but then circled back to us to make sure that we received the information, that we got what we need, that it had the intended effect. If there's anything else they can do to move the ball forward, depending on what it was. So, with that, I want to acknowledge Andy Inglesby from MTA New York City Transit, always a prince of a guy and always helpful. But this year, I don't have to tell the people here that handling transit was extra. And he was always so good with service updates, station renovation updates, because while we've been away from East 16th Street, the ADA ramp is being added. And general check-ins. He also, with some of our special events, unless you're closing down a street, you can't reroute a bus, but he'll help reroute buses if I'm just concerned about the squishiness of the event and the bus route. So always just extra helpful and super kind, and he cares that he's having impact. Along those same lines is Anna Carthen from Citywide Events, Coordination and Management, and which is also known as the Street Activity Permit Office. There were, street activities were put on pause. And so then we had the DOT programs with open streets for recreation and for restaurants and the like. And then some events were allowed to move forward, such as religious events, but it just kept, the rules kept changing, and the types of events and the people who were applying for them kept changing. And she was just always on her toes and worked closely with our community-based organizations, making sure that they had everything in place, you know, that, which includes food pantries and the refrigeration units. I mean, I never in my life would have thought that I would be helping a funeral home get a refrigerated unit permitted for decedents. And so SAPO and Anna Carthen, they were there every step of the way to help us figure out who needed what and how to get it, so that the organizations in our community could step up and serve those most in need. Michael Suflita, who's also one of our go-to guys at the Department of Parks and Recreation. He's in the forestry department, and this is a beautiful sunny day out today. So you might not recall that we had some pretty severe storms, but you do know that we are an old tree growth community. So those storms wreak a lot of havoc on some of our neighborhoods, and it was chaotic with sanitation on the strange schedule they were on during the height of COVID, and then storms and having to deal with that. And Michael Sofita was good at following up on a lot of the issues that came about in the blocked driveways and sidewalks and such. And he's always there. Also, I just want to note that he's Anya's nomination for being noted, because they work very closely together, and he's just so quick to respond, which isn't always true in city government when we're all we all have a lot on our plates. And then speaking of post-storm management and speaking of food pantries, I always do this shout out, but it's because it's so well deserved. My BK14 friends at sanitation, Joe Scalera, the superintendent there, they got the most draconian budget cuts of any city agency in terms of day-to-day operations, and they still did everything they could to make things work and make things happen. And then did extra. They did more. They didn't have to go out and pick up after food pantries if it wasn't that organization's day for pickup, but they did it every single time. Holiday food distribution events, they were out there, they, you know, working with people to get the refuge to the curb so that they could collect it. Newkirk Plaza, which we, you know, most of us know is an issue in oh so many ways all the time, and they go the extra mile over there too. So again, those agencies will be getting, their heads will be getting letters that recognize these agency partners. And thanks for listening. And, you know, if you see your sanitation workers out there, thank them, because it's been quite a year and they're so behind the scenes. Not everybody knows to thank them. And then I also, you know, I've been told it's sometimes poor form to thank your own, but I can't, and I've said this before, but it bears mentioning in this context. Anya Hoyer from our staff just really was beyond the call of duty, whether it was learning, taking on new tasks, learning new skills, working with Brian Williams, who we're glad has joined the staff, and but you know, training somebody remotely has a whole host of challenges to it, and Anya just does it all with 99% good cheer, and when we can't be cheerful about it, we resort to humor, and she's got that in spades. So thanks, Anya. And then just quickly, I do want to note the passing of a community colleague, Mary Bishop, the Director of Constituent Services in the office of Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who's served this community for, oh gosh, well over a dozen, maybe a dozen and a half years. In a busy office and in a needy community. And she passed away. I know the services, I think were last night or earlier last night, I believe. But it's a sad, you know, it's a sad passing, and our condolences go out to our colleagues in Yvette Clarke's office, and certainly to her friends and family and to the community at large. So thank you, Chairwoman Joanne Brown, for this opportunity. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you, District Manager Sean Campbell. Let me also say condolences to the family. I'm sorry to hear that. And let me also say thank you so much to the district office, to Anya Hoyer. Again, can't thank you all enough for helping me in the transition to this chair position, and for just being like the most amazing staff of any community board in this entire city. And thank you to all of the agency partners who have helped us get through COVID-19 in the best way that we could. Moving the agenda forward, I want to invite Julia Mensch to talk about ranked choice voting. I'm looking forward to the presentation. It's all yours.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you all for having me here again tonight. I really appreciate y'all inviting me back. Like Joanne said, my name is Julia. I am a member of Ranked Choice New York. We are a statewide, nonpartisan nonprofit advocating for the adoption of ranked choice voting throughout the state. And it's my pleasure to come here tonight to provide some context why ranked choice voting helps, what problems it fixes in our current plurality system, as well as a real breakdown of how it works and how the votes are counted. I know by now many of you are probably familiar with how it all works. So I'm hoping that, if you're not familiar yet, I hope I will help you out this evening. But I'm also hoping that, my breakdown will help you explain it to your community more effectively, more concisely. And if you have other groups in your community that you'd like to invite me and Ranked Choice New York to provide this presentation, or even a more condensed version that just explains how it works, we would definitely welcome those opportunities. I'm just gonna paste a few of our links into the chat here. This is our website. Of course, as a nonprofit, we're always welcoming donations. And we're also inviting everyone to our June 27th statewide meeting. That is right after the primary. So if you like ranked choice voting and you want to see it in the general election, you want to see it in the statewide elections, please join us, as well as our email address there. So with that, I will share my screen. Okay, Joanne, you want to give me a thumbs up if that worked? Awesome, great, thank you so much. All righty, so what is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting is simply an instant runoff election. It's a simple process where each voter gets to rank their preferred candidate instead of being limited to a single option. This is not a new system. It has been used throughout the United States since the early 1900s. It was used by New York City itself about a century ago. And today it is being used statewide in Maine and Alaska, as well as many other local jurisdictions across the country. It is also being used nationwide in Australia, Canada, Fiji, Hong Kong, Ireland, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and many more. So we, Ranked Choice New York, are working to get ranked choice voting adopted statewide here in New York, as well as expanding it to other local jurisdictions outside of New York City. So what does ranked choice voting look like? Here we see a ranked choice voting ballot. So let's say we wanted to pick an ice cream flavor for tonight's meeting. How could we possibly pick one flavor when there are so many options out there? It's simple. All attendees rank their preference. And in the end, whichever option has the broadest support of all attendees wins. So in this example, let's say chocolate is my favorite option. I can rank chocolate first. Maybe I'm also willing to have Rocky Road, and I'm even willing to settle for vanilla. But I'm actually straight up allergic to strawberry, so I'm not even going to rank strawberry. I don't want strawberry to win at all, so I just leave that blank. So that's my ballot. How do we figure out which option has the broadest support? Well, clearly we see that if one option has the support of at least half the attendees, that option is the best option. And for me, even though I'm allergic to strawberry, I'm okay with it because I can see, okay, clear and away, strawberry was the best flavor for everyone who's at the meeting. But what happens if no option gets more than 50% of the vote? Here we see strawberry is getting less than a third of the vote. Under our current system, that would still mean that strawberry would win. And we see this happen with elections all the time when we have more than two candidates running. And as you all know, we have 5 candidates running right now in the Republican primary, and I think it's 12 or even 16 candidates running in the Democratic primary that are actually on the ballot. So with this system, I'd be super disappointed. I'm allergic to strawberry, and I can't even tell if this was actually the preferred option for everybody. So enter the instant runoff election. Because everybody already said who they would vote for in the next round, all we have to do is count folks' second choices. How do we do that? We start by eliminating the flavor with the least number of first choice votes. So we can see here that chocolate got the least number of votes. That means chocolate is going to be eliminated, and their votes are going to their second choice. Remember, my second choice was Rocky Road, so now my vote is counting for Rocky Road. And it turns out Rocky Road and Strawberry are now real close, but Strawberry's still in the lead. But if all vanilla voters supported Strawberry or all supported Rocky Road, that would definitely decide this election. So we need to see what vanilla voters have to say about this. Well, it looks like vanilla voters agreed with the chocolatiers. Rocky Road got the biggest bump, and that means Rocky Road has the broadest support, and with ranked choice voting, Rocky Road actually wins the day. So that's what ranked choice voting is. That's how it works. But why do we need it? Simple. It's to prevent spoilers. In our ice cream example, let's say there was no ranked choice voting. I only got to raise my hand for chocolate. Folks who preferred vanilla only got to raise their hands for vanilla. Well, once all the votes were counted, it turns out we split the Rocky Road vote, and Strawberry won with less than a third of the vote. And this is tragic for me. I'm allergic to strawberry, and no one even knew I would have been good with Rocky Road. So in my example, chocolate and vanilla spoiled the Rocky Road vote, which could have met both vanilla and chocolate needs. So turning to politics, there is the ever infamous spoiler case study of Bush v. Gore in Florida. So for those of you who don't remember or were living under a rock in the year 2000, the 2000 presidential election came down to just one state, Florida. So without getting into the hanging chads in that election, by the number of votes counted, this is how it broke down. George Bush won the state with 48.85% of the vote. Al Gore came in second with 48.84% of the vote, 0.0001%, and it was a difference of only 537 votes. We also had a third-party candidate in that election, Ralph Nader, and he got over 97,000 votes. So what would have happened with ranked choice voting? Exit polls show that if there had been a runoff, 45% of Nader voters would have voted for Gore. That's about 43,000 votes. Meanwhile, only 27% would have voted for Bush. That's about 26,000. And the other 28% wouldn't have voted at all. In sum, Gore would have won Florida with 50.4% of the vote, a difference of over 17,000 votes. Remember, under our current system, neither candidate had a clear majority, and the margin was only 500 votes. Only after every voter's preference was taken into account did a clear picture emerge on who Florida voters truly wanted in the White House. And this is not just an issue for one party or for third parties. This issue truly affects everyone, because look at what happened just 8 years earlier when George Sr. faced a spoiler of his own, Ross Perot, and Bill Clinton took the White House with only 43% of the vote, not even close to a clear majority of voters' preferences. And of course, this problem is not reserved for presidential races, as I already mentioned. There are many examples of spoilers in New York elections. For example, in 1970, a conservative went to the US Senate because the liberal Republicans split the vote with the Democrat Richard Ottinger. More recently, in 2014, Mark Pinapinto, the man who took office representing his district, got fewer votes than the 2 third-party candidates in that election. So the conclusion, our current system, the plurality system, is actually the spoiler. First, and most obviously, it splits coalitions of like-minded voters amongst many candidates. So in my ice cream example, the Rocky Road vote got split and Strawberry won the day. Second, this splitting of coalitions causes the spoiler effect. Because chocolate and vanilla got any votes, the vote was spoiled for Rocky Road, which could have met all of their needs. Third, the spoiler effect scares people off from voting their true conscience. Since I'm allergic to strawberry in our current system, I can't even risk voting for chocolate. So I would have tried to figure out what the most popular non-strawberry option was and voted for that instead of what I really wanted, which was chocolate. Fourth, as we have seen, our current system fails to guarantee that the person taking office is the person with the broadest possible support from the voters. This routinely means that a person with less than a majority support is elected to represent all of us. Fifth, the current system discourages people from running because they're afraid of being spoilers themselves. This causes more traditional, less diverse candidates to be the ones that get elected and run. In sum, the current system limits our choice and our voice in the voting booth. So the solution is ranked choice voting, where instead of picking just one candidate, ranked choice voting lets you rank multiple candidates in the order you prefer them. And this system has many more benefits, as demonstrated by all the jurisdictions using ranked choice voting in the United States already and around the world. Ranked choice voting ensures that every elected official has broad voter support. It also has been shown to reduce negative campaigning, lowering the temperature of our politics. This is because every candidate will be running to be your second choice as well as your first choice. So for example, in San Francisco, a ranked choice city, we now routinely see candidates cross-endorsing each other. Rank for me first, but rank my friend here second. Ranked choice voting also simplifies runoff elections. Y'all remember that mess that happened down in Georgia with the Senate runoff, where voters had to go back to the voting booth a second time. With ranked choice voting, they wouldn't have had to do that. We would have already known who their second choice was. And speaking of voter turnout routinely increases after the adoption of ranked choice voting. This is because it enables broader voter participation, giving voters more voice to express their top choice. It also empowers military and overseas voters. I, as a former Peace Corps volunteer myself, it was very painful to cast my vote knowing that it may not even be counted before the results were tabulated. And in a runoff election, my vote may not have even made it across the ocean in time to be counted at all. Ranked choice voting has also been shown to empower women and people of color, as I already mentioned. For example, in cities that have adopted ranked choice voting, representation for persons of color increased by nearly 20%. During that same period in that same region, cities that did not adopt ranked choice voting, representation only increased 3% during that same period. And the same thing is true of women. This was a study of 9 US cities before ranked choice voting and after ranked choice voting. Before ranked choice voting, women only made up a quarter of the city councils. After ranked choice voting, they made up 50%. So in sum, ranked choice voting more fairly represents the full spectrum of voters, and this has a natural effect on voter turnout. Because ranked choice voting empowers voters with greater choices in the voting booth, it dramatically improves voter turnout. And this is not the only tool in the ranked choice voting toolbox. There are a wealth of voting reforms out there, including multi-winner ranked choice voting, which helps get rid of gerrymandering. Every reform you can imagine to make our nation and our planet a better place starts with elected officials who listen to the voice of the people. Ranked choice voting is the first step in making that dream a reality. So for all of these reasons, we support ranked choice voting as a real practical solution. It eliminates spoilers and vote splitting, encourages more people to run, curbs negative campaigning, and gives voters more choice and more voice. Okay, so y'all are sold. I know that in New York City, y'all are sold anyway. We already adopted it here, right? We're, like I mentioned, working to bring it to the state level. And how are we going to get that done? We, Ranked Choice New York, are building a statewide movement. We're doing just that, and we need your help. So we are going across the state asking folks to join us. We are working around the June 22nd primary, not only to educate New York City voters, but also to bring the message across the state as a whole. So if you are as passionate about ranked choice voting as I am, or even a quarter as passionate about ranked choice voting as I am, I invite you to join us. You can scan this code right here with your phone to get access to all of our social media pages. And I'm also going to put, like I mentioned, I put all that information in the chat. So whether you want to volunteer, want to learn more, toss in a few bucks to the campaign, we would love to follow up with you in a couple of days. And like I mentioned, we're also hosting our June 27th Ranked Choice New York statewide meeting right after the June primary. So I totally understand if you all want to just focus in on New York City up until June 22nd. But on June 27th, I hope you'll stop by our meeting and join up with us. So once again, I just want to thank you so much for having me back before this community board tonight. I'm your neighbor over in Bushwick, so I really appreciate y'all inviting me back here tonight. So thank you so much. With that, I will end this wonderful presentation if I can figure out how, and I will take any questions that y'all have.
Thank you so much, Julia. I do have a question from Carl Henry Cesar. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Joanne, and thank you very much, Julia, for the presentation. And so, very high level, I have two questions. So the first one is regarding the ice cream example, right? You had the 4 choices, and then your ballot also showed write-in. And so my question is, in your example, if there had been, fewer votes for Strawberry than the write-in, would the write-in have been the 4th candidate instead of Strawberry? And then the second question I have is, when you were showing the split of men compared to women in city council before and after ranked choice voting, and also those graphs, my question for you is, from what you've seen, is that correlation or causation, or is it that they don't know the answer yet? They've just noticed that this is what the information looks like when this has been implemented, but the jury is out in terms of what has been the determining factor.
What fabulous questions. Thank you so much. So if the write-in candidate got more votes, then they would be added into that process. So although my ice cream example only went through those 4 candidates that were already on the ballot, yes, was there a write-in candidate that got, statistically significant number of votes greater than 1, they certainly would have been part of that runoff process. As to your second question, is it causation or correlation? That is the struggle of the political sciences, isn't it? To determine whether it's causation or correlation, right? What I can say is that there have been repeated studies across the country, both on the national level and on the local level, on the regional level, that repeatedly show that women are more likely to win ranked choice voting elections. Now, there are a number of hypotheses about that. One is that, without ranked choice voting, the more traditional candidate is going to get more plurality votes. But with ranked choice voting, because voters are less afraid to vote for non-traditional candidates, they don't have to ask themselves uncomfortable questions like, oh, but are we really ready for a woman mayor? Because those questions are completely eliminated with ranked choice voting, and voters are more comfortable voting for their true preference. That could be a reason. Another reason is, like I mentioned, the reduction in negative campaigning. It's just a safer environment to engage politically within. So that's another hypothesis for why we've seen such an increase across the field with ranked choice voting and representation of women.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia.
The next question is from Sean Campbell.
Thank you. Thanks for the great, clear presentation, Julia. I've got 2 questions as well. One is, how and why was the number 5 determined? Why do we have 5 choices, and why is it the number 5, no matter how many candidates are in the race? And then my other question is, without wanting to sound cynical, do you talk at all about strategy? There are a lot of questions about, if there's somebody I don't want, should I put a front runner in front of that person? Do I rank all? What's bullet voting? So if you could talk about the extent to which ranked choice voting might encourage some strategizing, I would appreciate that too. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you for those questions. So as to the number of ranks, every jurisdiction picks has their own discretion. Oakland, California, they only get 3 ranks. San Francisco just upped their number of ranks to 10 because they love ranked choice voting so much that they decided they wanted more of it. So I think we have seen that being somewhat of a pattern with local jurisdictions adopting ranked choice voting, that when they first adopt it, they sort of limit the number, and then maybe later on they'll expand it out as people get more adjusted to the idea. So why New York City picked 5? I think 5 is a good even number. That's basically what it comes down to, I think. And it reduces the number of rounds that can happen. And so that sort of ties into the strategic voting question that you just asked. So with plurality voting, with our current system, the one and only vote that you get is a strategic vote. You know, you can't risk, like I couldn't risk voting for chocolate because I'm allergic to strawberry, that kind of concept. I had to figure out, well, who's the most likely candidate that everyone else is going to pick? I better vote for them to make sure that I don't end up with an option I'm allergic to, right? So with ranked choice voting, you still get that strategic vote. It's just your 5th rank, right? In New York City, because you have the 5 ranks. So that 5th rank, that's your strategic vote. If you're committed to making sure that someone you're allergic to doesn't get elected, that's what your 5th vote is. But your first 4 ranks, you have 4 opportunities. This is my hope and my prayer. This is, oh, I really like them, just not quite as much. Oh, this one, they've got like some shady stuff going on, but maybe I still am on board their train. And then you get all the way to the 5th option, and that's where you cast your plurality vote, if you will.
Thank you, Julia. Julia, I kind of have like a of the moment question. So on Twitter was super active today about the fact that the DOE is not going to release the results of ranked choice voting per se, but only the winner. Do you have any like information, or maybe can give us an idea on how this looks? It's apparently, like what I saw today was city BOE says no RCV tabulation on election night, only first choice unofficial results. So
yes, right. So because of the way New York state law is written, as y'all know, I'm sure as you're familiar, we cannot start counting ballots at all until election day. Despite the early voting that's happening, we can't even begin the tabulation process until election day itself. And so on election day, they will have the preliminary results of the first round, but you can't really advance to the second round until all your votes are in, because you have to know which candidate you're eliminating before you can start the whole instant runoff process. And so again, because of the way state law is written, limiting the counting options, we have to wait until all of the votes are in and counted, which is why I actually appreciate that the board released that, because it's helping to manage everyone's expectations ahead of time, which is important, because I know, with presidential elections or with CNN, everyone's sort of excited about getting results the night of. Between New York law and implementing this new process, it is going to take a little bit longer in this election.
Okay, so we're saving time by not having runoffs, but we're just going to spend a little bit more time on the back end to receive all of the votes, and then for them to go through and go through the process of ranked choice. So it's not going to be an election night result. It could be a week or maybe 2 weeks.
I believe they are even saying it might be 3 weeks. So and eliminating the full runoff that was happening in New York City, obviously it's not just a matter of saving time, it's a matter of saving money. It's a matter of not forcing voters to go back to the voting booth. I don't know if you've seen studies on, the impact of having to go back for a runoff election. We usually see 70 or 80% drop off in participation between a general and a runoff. The exception, obviously, is the Georgia election, where tons of more people showed up because of what was going on in Washington at that point.
See, this is why we're so lucky to have you tonight to answer this question. Well, I don't see any other hands for you, but I want to thank you so much for coming here today and looking forward to participating in this process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know somebody flagged a typo in that email address in the chat, so I am providing that correction right now for y'all. Thank you so much for checking my spelling. And yeah, thank you all again so much for inviting me back here tonight. This was really wonderful. Please feel free to email if you have any questions. Like I said, if there are other community groups that you would like to see this presentation brought to, and so forth. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, and be well. Thank you. So I was sort of hoping that we would have a few more of the members of the executive committee here that haven't heard me talk about some of the changes I've been thinking about to the topical committees. So I see a lot of faces that have been on our bylaw committee meetings. So hopefully this isn't redundant, but the whole thing is recorded. So if other members of the executive committee choose to watch the broadcast of this, they'll see what I'm presenting you now. So because we have a little bit of time, Anya, can my share the screen is grayed out, probably because we had a previous presenter, but I just wanted to start with talking about the regional committees. Thanks so much, Anya. Right. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. All right. So regarding the regional committees right now serve the purpose of forming the nominating committee. So what we have here, the blue pins are board members, and this is how they are currently spread out in the district. You'll see the committees have been outlined here. To the upper left, that's Regional Committee 1, upper right, Regional Committee 2, lower left, Regional Committee 3, and lower right, Regional Committee 4. So you can see that there is an imbalance of where board members are populating in the committees. And what I've been thinking is, you know, for example, in Regional Committee 1, it would take a very long time for I believe there are 24 people thereabouts right now in that regional committee. It would take, you know, take many years for someone to come up in the nominating committee and be part of that process. Whereas in the south of the district, we have about 4 people in Regional Committee 3 and about 5 people in Regional Committee 4. And so there's more representation, or the same people are being represented over and over. So what I was proposing is that we find a way to redistribute by redrawing the lines. So I'm going to show you how I was thinking about this process. So I just shut off Regional Committee 1, the original, and I'm turning on Regional Committee 1 proposed. And then let me go ahead and do that again. I'm going to shut off Regional Committee 3, and I'm going to turn on the new proposed Regional Committee 3. And then lastly, I'm going to shut off the original Regional Committee 4 and show you the new committee. So what we see now is we've sort of broken up the area that was a Regional Committee 1, and now we have redistributed the population into 2 regions. So let me tell you what that looks like with numbers. In Regional Committee 1, we originally had about 25 members. With this new distribution, we have 11 members. Regional Committee 2, which I didn't change the boundaries at all, that was 12 and it stays the same. Regional Committee 3, which is this area right here, now has 14 people. And then lastly, when we've combined what was the old Regional Committee 3 and 4, we now have 10 people. So you see a better distribution, but still retaining identity in the South, because I know that the imagining of the committees to begin with was to foster inclusion and diversity. So we now have a better distribution of numbers in all of these areas, so people have a better chance, especially in what was originally one, to serve on the nominating committee. So that was my thinking. Of course, you know, I'm doing this because I wanted everyone to have a better sense of what I was thinking about in reimagining where the lines are. And so you can have a thought about it when we move to talking about the final draft of the bylaws, which will be in the fall at some time. Alrighty. So I am done sharing this with you. And then I just wanted to, I'm going to go back to the screen. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. And then what I was thinking about for the topical committees was, since, you know, we the major limitation is really staff hours. I don't want to add additional committees, but I want to fortify the ones that we have. And by combining those leaves us a position of creating a new committee, which would basically be housing and land use. So my proposal for the bylaws was to combine transportation and community environment. And that would mean removing some of the duties of community environment and moving that to land use and housing, while we would listen to a presentation like we have on the 10th about the zoning text amendment. We would move that zoning text amendment presentation to housing and land use. Community and environment would still continue to function with parks and some of the other things, and then transportation would continue to do business. And then education, let me look to see what I did here because I'm shot. So we were talking about adding something to education's libraries and community to add business or commerce or business economic development. And some discussion that I had with Dwayne Joseph, who is a board member, he had an interest in seeing economic development present in our topical committees. And that could include also if we ever have review of licenses or liquor licenses, which we haven't really in a while, that could fold in there. And that would open up a space for a topical committee for housing and land use. And that would be multifaceted. I think it's important to understand that having city agencies come in that have agency over housing, like HPD, and also understanding that it's about our district renters, and it's also about our district homeowners who right now we're looking at property tax hearings, and it could, you know, that information can fall into there. And then land use. And while I am still on the fence about having our presentations about, you know, the ULURP process and special permits fall in that land use, I still think that there is value in having public hearings, because I think there are some mechanisms in the public hearing process that will offer transparency. I think it's time for us to make housing and land use a priority within our topical committees. So that's all I wanted to say here. I know a lot of you have already heard me speak about this at the bylaws committee, and I'm happy to take any questions. I just wanted to apprise the executive board on my thought processes. So feel free to raise your hand or, hi Glenn, go ahead.
Hi, first let me apologize for my late arrival. I was pruning plants, but no, it's basically a question because your new committees, there seem to be 4 people who live outside of the district. I was not aware of that, and I'm just curious about that. And as far as the new configuration, I have no problem with it. I even like it, provided we can have some type of review process every some number of years, since originally it was the members more evenly distributed, and over time it has migrated in a way that makes sense what you're proposing now. But maybe 4 or 5 years from now we should revisit it, because who knows, maybe things will change again. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So with regards to the, I'm just going to bring the map up again so we're not talking in the ether. So with regards to the members who live actually outside the district, they're likely appointed by an elected. And they live here, but they have some kind of business interest in the district. So that's why we see these pins here and here and here, and then in the south. I think there's actually somebody, yeah, there's somebody like all the way out here. So likely they were appointed by an elected official and they have a business interest in the district. So that's my explanation for it. Sean brought up an interesting point in having Department of City Planning do a quick synopsis of what we look like, and then extrapolating that back to the map to make sure that we're really being inclusive. And then with regards to review on a some kind of periodic basis of the boundaries of the regional committee, I think that it's up to the bylaws committee to make a recommendation and the full board to go ahead and suss it out, or to go ahead and think about that and come to a conclusion. But we will always, likely our necessity to review the bylaws. The last time the bylaws were reviewed and adopted and ratified was in 2015. It's 2021. Assume that in the future we'll have a similar timeline. So the next hand I see is Sean Campbell.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a finer, sort of reiterate or punctuate what you just said, Joanne. The city charter requires that board members live, work, or have a significant interest in the community, so they don't have to be residents. And I don't know who, if whether or not they were all nominated by city council members before the borough president appointed them, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that it's a charter. The charter description of a community board member, it falls into one of those 3 categories. They don't have to be a resident.
Thanks for clarifying. Yes, they can be an appointed member and still live out of the district. They don't have to have been appointed by an elected official. And I see a hand from Steve Cohen.
Yeah, I like, as I've said, I like the thinking in terms of the regional committees, and I think the thoughts are good with regard to the topical committees. I just have some initial reactions or I guess feedback regarding the topical committee proposals. I guess one thing that comes to mind is if we have a housing and land use committee, that they should probably be the ones that committee should probably deal with the like any housing and land use issues. So I would think that starting like the zoning change applications or the special permits there would seem to make sense to me, if we're going to have a group of people who are going to, who are committed to dealing with those issues for the year. One other thought I had was, if we're proposing adding economic development to education, libraries, and cultural affairs, that's seems like a lot of topics, and I think education would go well with youth services. So maybe we could, move education into youth. Just an idea. And I guess the only other thing was transportation and community environment being combined. I don't know. It just gives me a little pause, just because those two committees seem to have pretty fairly full agendas and a lot of interest. So I guess one, would their agendas be overloaded? And two, would the interest in that committee swamp some of the others? And well, I guess in addition to that, I would imagine housing and land use would be a fairly desirable committee for some folks, although I guess I'm speculating to some degree. But that's just my initial reaction to the proposed changes.
Thanks, Steve. I think what I need clarification on is if we move presentations about special permits and zoning changes to a land use committee, is the applicant still required to send out certified mail to a certain radius of individuals who would be affected by it, like they are in a public hearing? That's the mechanism that I think is important about the public hearing. And if it's retained in a committee, because that's the process for the applicant, then the public hearing, to me, can be absorbed by the committee. So that's the information that I need to figure out, and that I need to become educated upon. And yeah, I mean, combining transportation and community environment is a lift. The issue right now is that the Department of Transportation presents to us, but they are right now not really soliciting a lot of feedback. So we receive a presentation, but I feel like we don't have as much input as we used to. And that's just the way things are right now. And with that thinking is why I was suggesting that we combine the two, because it's less of a discussion than it is a presentation. So I hope that, at least you have a little bit better idea of what I was thinking. We have like 4 more. I see Glenn has his hand up, so we'll take Glenn's question.
Thank you. I'm just curious about how this land use committee might work. Right now, when we do the public hearings, pretty much everyone is encouraged to come to them. But if we had the public hearings within a committee, the only people who would really be encouraged are those people on that committee. So I'm just curious as to how you would work this so that we would have enough representation, to decide these things. Thank you.
So let me just clarify that the public hearings would be the public hearings about zoning changes and special permits. They wouldn't be within the committee. The committee would be focused on presentations like we're going to hear on June 10th, which is the zoning text amendment for hotels. And then also the past presentation that we saw on accessibility zoning changes, where the MTA and DCP are coordinating with private developers to create space for accessibility. So that would be the gist of how the land use committee would function along with other housing issues. But the public hearings would still be the public hearings. With that, Sean Campbell has her hand up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a function of ULURP as to who has to serve notice in a 400-foot radius. I don't think it's a function of the community board side of it. I think it's a function of the type of permit, and I can get clarification on that so I can speak more specifically about which does what. And I think that was all I wanted to jump in and say. Other than, having the conversation sort of beyond the bylaws committee, as Joanne shared with me, it just makes sure that the board members don't feel like, there's these behind closed doors conversations, and also gives everybody an opportunity to think ahead. So it's like if it's sprung on you and you haven't really thought about what communities can marry each other, then, it's kind of harder off the cuff, but hopefully people put some pre-thinking into the next gathering, because I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of where we're up to in the processes. We'll be discussing committees at the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, we started on the regional ones, and we didn't finalize the decision, so we'll start with that, and then hopefully move to topicals in short order.
Okay, and I'll do a little bit of work too to put together a list of how many committees had how many meetings and how many of them were, to the extent that I can recall and suss out, how many of them were agency initiatives and how many of them were community boards asking agencies to come and present. And just to remind everybody, we can call a public hearing on anything. It doesn't have to be, there's certain things that we have to hold public hearings on, but we can dub something a public hearing beyond land use stuff, so that we have that within our toolbox.
Thanks for that, Sean. So we're getting close to the end of the committee meeting. I'm going to take the one last question from Ann Gaudette. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, thank you, Joanne. Although we handle SLA, the State Liquor Authority, permits differently, and it's more internal, those also have a requirement, a component for notice as well. Just as a, oh, by the way, so there's various notices we can determine. The notice has to be given as to what the decisions are and how it's handled. The board can probably determine. So that's a different spin on notice outside of HPD or ULURP. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, the concept of economic development is something because Dwayne has a deep interest in that, I want to get more feedback from him on how he sees that component added to the existing committee. But thanks for listening again. As Sean pointed out, the bylaw committee is doing very hard work within its time frame. And I just, since I was hoping to have members of the executive committee here, I just wanted everyone who is attending this meeting to sort of get a better sense of, because it's pretty significant change to the bylaw. So thanks for listening. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming to the executive committee meeting. That was a great presentation about ranked choice voting, and I'm glad we got a little bit of a sense on how this is going to look on election day. I want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day and the beginning of summer. And I will see you very soon at the Community Board 14 general meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, everybody.
Sean, Steve, could you stay on for a quick minute, please? Did Steve leave already? Okay.
No, I'm
But
here.
just that I'm not available. I'm going to be out of town